Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Watching the Boxes Fantasy Basketball Podcast, hosted by #basketball.com, your home for the best fantasy basketball and WNBA fantasy basketball on the internet. Go check them out. #basketball.com. I am your host, Mike Catron, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, the one, the only, Tyler Watts. What's up, Tyler?
Speaking of WNBA fantasy,
Oh,
did you see that Sue Bird? It was going around on Twitter interview. She
no,
totally roasted the reporter for asking her why she wasn't retired.
I did not. I did not see that. No.
You gotta check it out. It was great. It was
What did she?
fantastic.
What did she have to say?
She was basically like,
I,
and I don't remember how old she is, so
I
don't
still
quote me
got
on.
it. Is that how? Because that's how I
Yeah.
feel like it ended.
Well, and she's like, I can still really play. I love playing basketball, and you would not ask anyone else why they're still doing their job. So why are you asking me why I'm not retired? And I was like, oh, blamed, just blaming
That's
some poor
yeah.
reporter.
That's pretty good. She is 38 years old.
Yeah,
So
I knew it was in
Vince
her upper.
Carter, older
Carter wanting to come back next year too.
at 42. I hope he does. I hope he does it.
He breaks the record, right? It's an NBA record. The most anyone's ever played is 21 seasons. There is like 5 or 6 people tied for that record right now. Vince Carter's one of them. And if he comes back next year, he is the sole owner of the record.
I hope he does it. He deserves it. He's still dunking in games. Like he's great.
I mean, I won't claim to have seen a ton of him on the Hawks this year, but I mean, the year before he still looked good in spurts. Like he can't play a ton of minutes anymore, but
He's still a rotation player.
so I mean, he gets in there for 10 or 15 minutes and he looks good.
Yeah, I agree. So Tyler, today was the NBA draft lottery, and I went downtown Chicago where the lottery was taking place. And if anybody, any of our listeners out there, follow me on Twitter at Watch the Boxes, you saw that I was doing my best to go into the Hilton and rig the lottery for the Chicago Bulls. I even saw Zion Williams there when he was in the lobby. A lot shorter than I thought he would be. Still like an enormous human being, but a little bit shorter than I expected, Zion Williams. So watch out for the when he hits the combine, see what his actual height is without shoes. But I think I might have messed up when I was rigging the ping pong balls because Chicago dropped from 4 to 7th, Tyler, and it is a sad day here in Chicago.
Yeah. I can understand that. It was not a good day for the Dallas Mavericks either, so I feel your pain.
Yeah, that is. I mean, the Mavs give up their pick to Atlanta. Cleveland, who no one really wants to do, who cares about Cleveland? They deservedly dropped out of the top 4. But Phoenix, they're not well run, but neither is Chicago. They all drop, and for some reason, the rich get richer. The LA Lakers end up in the 4 spot. At least they didn't end up in the 1 or 2 spot. The Knicks somehow sticking the landing, ending up at the 3 spot, which is still kind of funny. Memphis at 2 and New Orleans at 1. That makes the AD saga becomes very interesting with the addition of Zion Williams.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see. David Griffin even basically said at the lottery, right, that his plan is to keep AD and to do everything he can to keep AD. And you guys probably saw the reports, right, that if the Knicks did get the number 1 pick, they were going to basically try to trade it for Anthony Davis. Well, no one's going to be trading the number 1 pick for Anthony Davis. So the Pelicans have to make a decision if they're going to have Zion, if that's who they want. I think that's pretty consensus at this point. But we've seen crazier things happen in the draft. So let's not mark it down till we mark it down. But are they better with Zion and Anthony Davis and Drew Holiday, or are they better with I mean, the Celtics are probably going to have the best package. We think we talked about this before, right? Like, are they better with Drew Holiday and Zion and Jason Tatum and Terry Rozier and like whoever else they can get from the Celtics?
Yeah, I don't know. Like they could try to swing. I don't know. They could try to swing Kimba, right? He's gonna be a free agent. Am I right about that?
Yes, sir.
So they could try to get Kimba and AD, add that to the Boston squad. That could be interesting.
Yeah, and I'll say this, and maybe I'm just out of the loop, but I don't think so, right? Like, I feel like there's a lot of all-stars that are free agents, and I feel like there's a lot of all-stars that kind of seem like they don't want to be on the team that they were on last year.
Maybe like every single one of them, which is really, really weird. I think a lot of people predicted simply because there are so many free agents, but like you said it, there's a lot of unknowns with those free agents. This is going to be one of the craziest off seasons, and last year was a crazy off season. This is going to be crazier than last season. So we already had it. We had a crazy lottery. We're going to have probably a pretty straightforward NBA draft, but
no.
There could be some trades. There could be some trades going into the draft.
I wrote a sentence earlier and then I immediately deleted it and wrote a different sentence. And I said, I wrote an article about the order, right? Just like recapping what the order was going to be for draft night. And I said, the final order is set for the draft, the 2019 NBA draft. And I immediately deleted it because I don't think there's been a year yet, I don't know, in the last 5 years, right, since I've been doing this, that there hasn't been a trade between lottery night and draft night that involved a pick.
It's usually, it is draft night because, like, theoretically, like, legally you can't do it till draft night. And actually, legally you can't do it till the beginning of the month after draft night.
Right. So, I mean, like, the Hawks technically drafted Luka Doncic. I mean, we can talk about that, right? They didn't. But, yeah, I mean, like, I always feel like, there's going to be movement. And we've seen some big trades go down between now and, draft night. I'm thinking of the Victor Oladipo one, right? Paul George one went down.
That was a big one.
So, yeah, I think we're probably going to see a trade similar to that, like something that – and those are the best ones a lot of times too because they're kind of out of nowhere and you're going, what just happened with what? That's crazy.
Yeah, and like this makes everything crazier with the way the lottery pulled out, and we are going to – I mean, we're going to keep covering this. Like NBA is a 365-day year sport. And a lot of the things that will be happening over this offseason will be affecting next year's fantasy basketball season, and especially the draft. So we are going to hold off on getting into too deep into the rookies until we know what teams they're going to be on. And even then, it's going to be a wild free agency before everything settles in. But I think it's pretty safe to say that Zion Williamson will be in New Orleans.
Well,
I don't know if it's like 100%, but I'd say it's like 95.
Yeah, unless
they trade him the first pick to the Lakers for LeBron James.
Right, and that's I guess
it's on the table.
I guess this year, some of these, like, what if Anthony Davis says, "I'll stay if you get me another superstar"? Well, how the hell else are they going to get another superstar in New Orleans without trading that first pick?
That's true. There is one way to do it.
So, he plays hardball enough. It might happen. So, the team, and there's another team too, I think definitely going to make a trade before draft night, and that's the Celtics. They have 4 first-round picks. They already have too deep of a team, right? I mean, like some of their guys, Terry Rozier being the main one, right? Just today was basically complaining that they didn't give him enough to do. I mean, they almost have too many players now, and they have 4 draft picks, including 3 first-rounders. I think you're going to see them definitely make some sort of move before draft night. What that move is yet to be determined.
Yeah. I am getting used to watching highlight reels of Bol Bol and assuming that he will be on the Chicago Bulls because they would, of course, draft a position that they do not need, or maybe Kobe White. It's going to be depressing. Either way, the season tickets will be at an all-time low here in Chicago. And quite frankly, I don't think this is everybody's like, oh, tanking is finally over. It's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would tanking be over? You still have a better chance of getting into the top 4 if you have the worst record. So tanking's not over with. And instead, I actually think it's worse. Since tanking still matters but doesn't matter as much, you're going to see more of these middle of the road teams end up in the, getting the first pick, second pick. And that's actually going to keep the bad teams bad. And unless you're in a major market like New York or Chicago, how many years is your metropolitan area and your fans going to take with your team missing out on a Zion Williamson? If you are, let's just say, the Cavs, you got lucky many, many, many times and only pulled up one championship in your joke of a city. How long are the Cavaliers fans going to hang around if they spend like 7 years not getting a top 3 pick? Like, I think this lottery system, this new lottery system, is actually detrimental because, like, why would you want your worst franchises to stay bad, ruining the product in those cities?
Yeah, I'm with you there. And, this whole tanking thing, like I guess the way the Sixers did it was an issue, right? But
yeah,
they're reaping the rewards of it now. So was it that bad?
I don't think so. And like the way the Bulls did it was they try to win games and they still suck. So like these teams that try to win games and are so bad that they are the Knicks or the Bulls this year or the Suns this year. Though you could, say there was a lot of Devin Booker sitting. Those teams are going to continue to be bad unless they get Ja Morant, unless they get Zion Williamson, and they didn't. So how long will they be terrible?
Well, you bring up a good point there, but I think, looking back on it, right, the number 1 picks are a little more surefire to be something, right? Like, this guy's going to be somewhat good. But how many years has the number 1 pick actually turned out to be the best player in the draft?
I mean, probably more often than not.
Ooh, I don't know, Mike. I'm going to have to.
In the last 15 years, we'll have to do a deep dive. We don't have time for that, but we will have to do a deep dive.
Well,
I'd say it's a pretty high percentage.
So
how about not more often than not, but more often?
Well, okay. Let's just look at like the last.
5.
Let's just look at the last 5 real quick. Ayton, best player in that draft.
I don't know. I don't even remember who was drafted when and where. I'm drawing a blank.
You know what I mean? Like, I think if you look at it, it's not
Luka Doncic at 3, 2017. Lauri Markkanen obviously at 7 was the best player in that draft. 2016.
Well, we can agree Markelle Fultz was definitely not, so that one's out, right? I mean, Ben Simmons. Okay, Ben Simmons might be the best player in that draft. So there's one out of 3.
De'Aaron Fox, maybe. Karl Anthony Towns in 15, and obviously Wiggins was terrible. Anthony Bennett was terrible. But then you have Davis, Kyrie Irving, John Wall, Blake Griffin, Derrick Rose.
But that's what I guess my point is.
I'd say it's more often than not.
Ooh, I mean, okay, so maybe, but it's still only right around 50%, I think. You know what I mean? Like, so, we make this hyperbole of like, oh, these teams have to get the top pick, but really it just comes down to getting the right pick. And just because everyone else is going, Zion's the best guy, doesn't mean Zion's going to be the best player in this class. That
is fair. I think in our bold prediction podcast, which everybody should go back and listen to because we kind of nailed it last year. There's a few big misses, but Tyler, you were really on last season, and I had a few just absurdly dead on predictions, like how many games Daniele Gallinari was going to play. Nailed that one to the exact game. But I made a bold prediction on next year, and I said John Moore is going to be the better fantasy player next year than Zion Williamson. And I'm going to stick by that until I see something different. I'm going to stick by it.
Yeah, and I mean, we can talk about the difference between fantasy and NBA too if you want, but like, it doesn't matter. I just think, the whole lottery, like, yes, we should probably reward the worst teams with the best picks. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't super believe in the
parity
whole,
is good.
but in saying that, like, those teams have to make the right picks, and the history of that is not the best.
Okay, that's a decent point. That is a very decent point. I am looking forward to the draft, even though the Bulls will be picking someone horrible, and I will hate them. And Denzel Valentine will start over them, and it will just be depressing.
The draft is a fun night in the sense that you never really know what's going to happen. Like,
That's
sometimes
true.
we pretty much know the number one pick, but I mean, usually even in the top 2 or 3, right? Like, I was saying the whole year last year, the Kings going to pick Doncic. They're going to pick Doncic. They even took like a large contingent over to Real Madrid to watch him play numerous times. And then they took Marvin Bagley and they left Luka Doncic for the Mavericks. So, crazy stuff happens.
That's true. Well, I guess last year was proof positive of that, and we will be bringing you a breakdown of the draft, a breakdown of free agency. So, stick around this summer to watching the boxes. We were still going to be bringing you content, but at this part of the season, I hope you're all enjoying the incredibly good playoffs. I hope you all were able to watch those game sevens on Mother's Day and catch those insane endings to probably one of the best second rounds in playoff history overall. But what we like to do at this period of time is look back at the year past and say, what went right, what went wrong, what was surprising, and how can we take that information and do better next year? And this tonight is the first part of a multi-part series of looking back at the top 60 players, how they finished, and let's set the ground rules, Tyler. How do you want to do the top 60 players? Per game or totals? 9-cat or 8-cat?
So I don't think you can do per game, because if you look at per game,
we could throw Jakar Sampson out. Like, that wouldn't be that hard to do.
Okay, but the problem is you didn't really get that value from that player, in the sense that there's a big difference between 72 and 80 games, right?
That's true.
And for example, right, you just look at someone like Steph Curry, played 69 games. Like, he should not be really a top 2 or 3 player, just because, you got to take something off for that missed time. And some people will say, oh, well, you could get a replacement level player, which is all well and good, except for when you play in a little bit deeper league where the replacement level player is Jakar Sampson.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean?
I see what you're saying. So let's do totals. I think that's more fair.
Right? And I mean,
and let's do 8-cat, because who cares about turnovers? I do, but nobody else does.
Well, and I just think the turnovers can skew things a little bit and let, not a good example this year because he did not play as good, but right, like guys like Otto Porter would slip into the top 25. Like, do you really want Otto Porter as a top 25 pick? Like, no, I just don't think you're getting enough points and rebounds and assists and steals from someone like that to really be worth, right? The opportunity cost there is significant if you're just looking for a guy with very minimal turnovers.
That's true. So let's get rid of turnovers. Let's make sure we're setting our games to end on April 10th, because I've messed that up before.
It's April 12th, but okay.
What? April 12th? Who played on the 12th? Nobody. Nobody played on the 11th, and nobody played on the 12th.
So. Yeah, someone played on the... Okay, maybe not.
That's right. So, we got the ground rules, everybody. We're doing total value. We're only doing 8-cats. We are getting rid of turnovers. So,
let's start with this point. It was a banner year. We talked about how hard it is to break into that first round. We had quite a few guys actually do it.
Yeah, I think 2 years ago, we had kind of like an open field for the top 8. You had your Hardens and your Durants and your Currys and your usual group of guys. This year, that narrowed down to like it's going to be Harden, it's going to be Katie, Curry, and maybe Cat, and maybe Giannis. That's it, like 5 guys. So it went from 8 maybes to 5 probablys, and all that was thrown out the window pretty much. Some of those guys obviously made it to the top, but the first round was a bunch of new guys, and we say this all the time. It is very, very hard. You have your top tier, you have your 1As, you have your 1Bs, and we'll probably talk about those 1As and 1Bs today. Then you have your second tier. Then you have your like third tier, and then it's a giant plateau of guys who are roughly the same, and then another big plateau of guys who are a little bit worse than that. And that's kind of how I feel out my rankings each year, is that who's going to make that third, who's going to come out of the plateau region into that third tier, who can make it from the third to the second, who could go from second to first. And there was a lot of surprising guys who went from third tier, second tier to first tier.
I will back you on that one.
But let's start with the best player in the league. He played 78 games. He played 36 minutes. He led the league in scoring. His name is James Harden.
Led the league in scoring by a ridiculous amount. Can we say that?
Yeah, 36 points a game.
Yeah, I mean, obviously didn't work out in the playoffs for Harden, but
hey, he got a little tired, and they fight Golden State harder than anybody does. I mean, I think you're going to see in this Portland series that Houston is the better team. Houston should be favored against Portland. Golden State's obviously favored against Portland, even without KD. So,
yeah, I mean, and it was unfortunate that was the semifinal matchup. And I mean, honestly, Houston might be the second best team in the league.
That's true.
So I don't think there's really much to say about Harden. I mean, we've seen him the last 3 years be a top 2 player.
Yeah, there's nothing to say here other than
the question.
I guess be your top 2 player next year.
Well, here's the question, right? Is he number 1? Like, is he going to be your number 1 pick in an 8-category league?
Maybe.
And I don't think
yeah, probably.
That's what I mean. I don't really think there's any question for me. It's like I'm gonna pencil him in there. If I have the number 1 pick, I'm gonna put him there, and I doubt that's gonna change unless he gets hurt. Like I feel like he's the safest of the safe options, and you're gonna get something pretty darn elite. He's only gonna be 30, so I just feel really good.
And I don't see that team. Even if they make some moves and move some players around and get interesting with it, I just don't see the way they play basketball to change at all, right? And James Harden made more 3-pointers this season than he ever has. I don't see that changing. I don't see, even with a heavy Chris Paul load, I still don't see his assists going down, rebounds going down. You want to keep an eye on his steals. His steals were actually, I believe, a career high per game at 2.1 per game, and those could probably sneak back down to 1.8, 1.7. Steals are finicky like that, but usually when guys start losing a step, they lose it in the steals. And so that could be something to keep an eye on going into next year. But other than that, if you're not counting his 5 turnovers a game, you don't care about that. And even if you did care about that, you're still doing really well. You're still one of the best fantasy players in the game, if not the best. I think you got to go hard next year. You think he's going to be a consensus number 1 throughout the fantasy basketball punditry corridors?
I don't know that he will, but he should.
Yeah, I think there's maybe one argument to make, and that might be a very healthy Anthony Davis.
Yeah, but okay, and
but I don't. Yeah, he's still in a big question mark, right?
Well, yeah, especially right now, right? We don't even really know where he's going to play. Is it New Orleans? Is it where?
No idea.
The other thing is, you said it, a very healthy Anthony Davis. Like, to me, I'm going to go Harden just because, we've seen Davis miss a handful of games every year. And like I said, he's the safest player. And he's the safest player to give you very elite production, I think.
I agree. Let's go to number 2. Surprising number 2. Shout out to Paul George, who not just made the fantasy leap from a kind of a second tier player, a guy that people, including myself, would put Jimmy Butler ahead of, and Paul George, second best player in fantasy this year, 8 category total value, played a ton of minutes, and elevated his game, took on a major usage role here. 28 points, almost 4 threes a game, 2.2 steals per game. Like, those are crazy, crazy numbers we have not seen from Paul George before. So I'm shocked by this. Do you think Paul George can do it again?
Yes and no, right? I think, Paul George, we've seen him basically, right, for 4 straight years, average about 2 steals a game. We've seen him average the blocks the last 4 years, so I think those are pretty safe. The Thunder have no choice but to pretty much run it back, right? I mean, like, they could trade Steven Adams, I guess. But
yeah, they can make a little bit of adjustments here and there, but you're looking at a very similar team.
Well, and they're in cap, you know what? So
That's
I mean,
true.
they can't really make that many moves. I think Paul George is going to take a ton of shots again. I think Paul George is going to hit a ton of 3-pointers because he's going to take a ton of 3-pointers. The rebounds and the assists, I guess, are the two things, you kind of question. But, we've seen him average 4 assists a game before, 3 times. Third time he's done it. So the rebounds might drop a little bit, but I don't know. I mean, there's not a great team for rebounding, and I doubt they're going to add anybody who's a great rebounder. So, you know what I mean? Like, the reason Westbrook and him get so many rebounds is, I mean, who else is there to rebound other than Steven Adams?
Yeah.
Nobody. Like, no one on that team tries to rebound. And so, and now obviously, right, he's going to miss the start of training camp. He had his shoulder surgery. That was announced. So,
yeah, but he'll be back pretty early in the season.
Right. But I mean, that's
games.
That's a little question mark, I guess, right? It's worth mentioning, I think. And
yeah,
so the question is he a top 5 pick?
Yes.
Next year?
I think he's definitely a top 5 pick next year. Second overall, I'm still a little bit.
Oh, no, I might not even take him in the top 5.
I'm a little worried about that. I think I'd take him in the top 5.
I mean, 29, like, we don't really have any reason to think he's going to, like, take a major dip. But if he went back to, like, 25 and a half points a game and, like, 7 or 7.5 rebounds and, like, 3.5 assists.
Well, sure. Like, if he takes a hit.
But you know what?
29 years old. He's in his prime. Like,
I agree. But, like, you see what I mean? Like, that's not unreasonable considering, some of the other numbers he's produced in his career for him to just, kind of take some small regressions back to the mean. And if that happens, then, he falls kind of out of that top 5.
Yeah, I think he's maybe a more riskier top 5, but as he's shown this year, he's got elite categories. He's elite at steals.
Okay, all right.
One of those 3-point shooters who make a difference, and he is a top-tier scorer in the league.
Let's do it. Let's figure it out right now. Ready? You want Cat or you want him?
Well, let's go through the top 5. We're going to talk about these guys anyway.
Well, okay. I mean, but I just feel like for me, he's like 7th right now.
Well, that's impressive. Okay, so you got Cat. I'd say, I don't know about Cat Daddy. I mean, Cat Daddy's so consistent.
Well, and him
probably go with Cat over George.
Him and Giannis are going to give you crazy rebounds, and I feel like rebounds are always like, especially that number of rebounds is always a little hard to come by.
A double-digit rebound is very hard to come by.
Right, so I feel a little bit better about that. So, give me those two. Then you obviously got Kevin Durant. You got Curry.
Depends on where Kevin Durant ends up at. Depends on where Curry ends. What the Warriors looks like. So it's going to be kind of hard for me because if Curry's kind of on his team like he without KD, like he is about to run shop in the playoffs, now I'm looking a little bit harder at Curry.
So this was maybe a qualifier when we got to talk about Steph Curry, which is coming up fast.
Yeah.
I think if Kevin Durant is gone and they relatively run it back with just like him, Draymond, and Klay Thompson, and they don't add anyone else like super crazy, even if Cousins is back there, whatever. The only person I could see replacing James Harden with the number one pick would be Steph Curry. Because we saw that season, the last season before Kevin Durant came, Steph Curry was had one of the best seasons statistically ever, right?
And we started seeing it at the beginning of this season too. Steph Curry came out hot, and he was the number one player in fantasy for those first few months before he got injured. And he's still got it. He's still got it in him. And so I would say you got to keep an eye on that as well. So, but let's talk about Karl Anthony Towns. He ended up at number 3. And you seem to have Karl Anthony Towns in high regard. He is the youngest. Well, he's the youngest guy, right? Or maybe Jokic is the youngest guy.
Nah, he's only 23. Jokic is older than that.
Yeah, you're right. I had to look it up. I'm usually pretty good at those ages. Karl Anthony Towns, the youngest guy, barely.
And maybe one of the most underrated guys in fantasy. Like he's a guy like him and Curry. They're the two guys you always see like, oh, I've got him at 6, I've got him at 7, I've got him at 8. It's like, man, Karl Anthony Towns is really good. He's really consistent. He's gonna produce a ton of stats. Like
good stats, bad team.
Well, and he keeps getting better, right? I mean, he's only 23. He just keeps getting better. He keeps inching away at it. He shot over 51% every season of his career. He's shot over 40% from three-point range the last 2 seasons. He's a great free throw shooter, 83% for his career. You know, he's going to give you over 12 rebounds. He's super consistent with rebounds, 12.3, 12.3, 12.4. He's
a lot more exciting in a 9-cat roto league and probably in roto leagues, but he still gives you those big rebounds that you're saying. His percentages are great, so if you care about percentages, he is one of the top players. He was per game 5th this year, 5th last year, 6th the year before that, and in totals this year 3rd, and last year 2nd.
Yeah, it's the first time he's missed any games, right? Played 82.
Second with turnovers, I believe. Second with turnovers.
Well, he's played 82, and 77, so you got to feel pretty good about that. Yeah. That health history as well.
33 minutes a game, so heaven forbid he plays 35. So technically room for a few more touches in there. But Karl Anthony Towns, you know what? You're probably going to talk me out of my top 5 Paul George statement by the end of this podcast, but Karl Anthony Towns has to be a top 5 player.
Yes, Karl Anthony, and here's what I'll say. He's one of the safest top 5 players, I feel like. Yeah. I feel like if you feel good about him staying healthy, you feel good about him blocking shots, getting rebounds, scoring a ton, hitting some threes, getting some assists.
You could take him 3rd overall.
Yeah, and I don't know that I would, right? Like at some point.
I don't know if I would either, but you could.
You got to shoot for some upside, but yeah, I mean, I think he's got to be in the top 5. And I think that's why.
Yeah, I've already talked myself out of Paul George in the top 5. Damn it, Tyler.
Yeah, and so yeah, I just don't think Paul George is the top 5 guy, and that's just me. So
which is crazy because he was 2nd overall in totals. But I think you have to, in my opinion, you got to go with this next guy who was 4th this year, who should be the MVP of the league, Giannis, out of Milwaukee, destroyer of worlds, most wins this season, which is not a category you care about in fantasy basketball. The only glaring issue with his game is his free throw percentage. And if you care about that, that is an issue. And that is one of the issues that LeBron always had. But, you know, Giannis does so much more all the time, all across the board. He is still a top 5 player, even with that 73% free throw percentage.
And Giannis is one of the very few guys who's not hitting a 3 a game.
That's it.
But, I mean, obviously you can make up for that, right? There's so many guys hitting so many threes. But, yeah, so who would you rather have next year? Assuming it's 8-cat, maybe it's head-to-head. We'll assume it's not roto. Karl Anthony Towns or Giannis?
Man, probably Giannis.
Yeah, see, give me Towns. I just feel like I feel great about having either one, right? It doesn't
Yeah,
really
they're
make
both
any
young. They're both
difference, but
absurd. But I think Giannis, like the way he improves, the way he dominates, the way he's going to be like the MVP of the league. Let's say his free throw percentage
and
gets a tad bit better, and he gets a little bit better at shooting threes, which, I mean, he has made strides this year. He also has the ability to bump those assist numbers up because he has that skill, right? Well, whether he'll be in a system next year with the players around him that will need more than 6 assists a game, I don't know, but you can't find a skill set like his from really any other player.
fact. It'll be interesting to see too. Milwaukee has both Malcolm Brogdon and Chris Middleton on the free agent market. Middleton is an unrestricted free agent. Brogdon is a restricted free agent. They're gonna have trouble paying them both unless they're gonna go deep into that luxury tax. So that'll be something to watch this summer too.
Not a huge surprise here with Giannis ending up at 4, though how well he played. Are you surprised that he didn't play better? I think a lot of people had him maybe as their number 1 pick last year.
Well, Bud coming in, right? They were the best team in the NBA, so it worked.
It was a great call on Bud.
But he played all their guys less minutes.
Yeah, it was a great call on that because you looked at it and you said, hey, the minutes go down when you play with Bud. And they did. But, Giannis still able to produce.
So, yeah, I'm not expecting a lot more minutes next year, though, if that's what you're asking me.
No.
I'm expecting like 33 a game for Giannis. Like, that's what Bud does. And, I followed that all the way back in Atlanta, and we saw that with, guys like Al Horford and Paul Millsap, and it's not going to change. Like, Bud's system works well, but Bud's system says even if you're a superstar, you play like at max like 34 minutes a game. You're not playing 35 or 36.
Well, this is getting weird because it sounds like we're probably going to have like a 1A, 1B, and 1C tier next year, the way we are talking, with James Harden probably the leader in the clubhouse, and then maybe 2 or 3 guys you can make an argument for, but then, and which we will talk about here in a little bit, but then everybody else who is still a first-round talent falling outside of that, that top 1A, 1B tier. So Giannis, probably one of those people you could try to make it. I think you could make a real argument for certain people and try to make an argument for other people. He's like a try. He's not a certain. So he'd probably be in that 1B section along with Karl Anthony Towns.
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to start hitting all these 3-pointers like he shot.
Not out of nowhere. No, it's going to be a steady increase, if anything.
And he shot 25% this year. Like, he's not going to all of a sudden start hitting 35. Like, that's not the way it works. And so he's not going to take enough attempts to even get over 1. I mean, unless he makes a drastic improvement, which is possible, but not likely. So, yeah, I mean, I just don't really see a lot of upward mobility for Giannis. So definitely I'm not looking at him at number 1. I'm probably not even looking at him at number 2, but I mean, I think he's definitely in that top 5.
Yeah, I would agree. The next guy who was in the top 5 this season in totals, 8-cat, Nikola Jokic, breakout season, played almost 32 minutes a game, only 31.3 minutes a game.
You messed up, and you forgot somebody.
Who did I forget?
Kevin Durant is 5th.
Oh, well, not on my rankings, my friend. Maybe I need to click over to your rankings.
Are you still looking with now? Jokic turned the ball over more than Kevin Durant. I'm not sure how this happened here.
Where are you on Monster or are you on Hashtag?
Yeah, I'm on Basketball Monster.
Okay, so am I. Sometimes they get weird like this. I'll just cut this part out.
Yeah, so I have down total value per game stats, date range 1016 to 412.
F to 410. That shouldn't matter.
No, I'm telling you, there was games on the 11th.
Not according to ESPN. Let me do.
Well, how many? Where's Durant at on yours?
6. They're tied.
No, mine says Durant 103 1.03 and Jokic 1.02.
1.03. I have a 0.81 and 0.81.
I don't know how the hell you did. You have punt turnovers on?
Yeah.
I'm gonna change this to the 10th, see if it changes. Oh, my session expired. And what the hell that means? What does that mean? Oh, boy. I hate that it counts the playoffs in this. Basketball Monster.
Yeah, I don't know why they would ever do that.
Eject it up. Oh, I'm not.
Are you doing 10 or the 12th? I can do whatever you do.
I am doing, and even on the 10th, it still says mine sells Durant is 5th.
All right, I switched to a head-to-head league because I was in a roto league.
Oh, you're actually signed into Basketball Monster, huh?
Yes.
Yeah, see, I'm signed out and just looking at the rankings that way. So that way it's not like factoring any league.
All right, let me sign out then.
Because it sometimes factors in your leagues and shit and like messes it all up.
Player rankings, total value. Oh, for you said 10 or 12?
10's fine. Doesn't matter that they're the same.
Should be. Punt. Turnovers. Yeah, it's Durant at but
Yeah, I don't know what was causing that, but
I don't either. I wonder why in my roto league it would be a little bit better than the other one. Why would that take into account? I don't know. All right, let me.
What were you clicked on league value or were you clicked on punt value?
Punt value.
Because if you click on league value, although this says league value,
I was on punt value, and these are higher rankings than the other ones. They were ranked worse. I think it's because I play in a shallower league, but that would make any sense in my opinion. But whatever.
Well, I guess like 8 or 10 teams instead of 12 as this is setting up with. What it would do is it would make stats that are unique. Like it would make Jokic's 7 assists worth
Probably a
more.
little bit more, yeah.
Because there's like better player, like the replacement value is higher.
All right. I'll just pick it up from wherever. Let a pause happen so I know where to edit this. Oh, you're right. Number 5 is not Nikola Jokic. It's Kevin Durant. Barely, though. Very, very slightly made it into 5th place. Kevin Durant, who only played 78 games, so 2 less than Nikola Jokic. But another, absolutely stellar season from Kevin Durant. One of the best players in the league. Probably one of the best players who will go down as one of the best players of all time. I don't have much to say about Kevin Durant. He just had another Kevin Durant season.
Well, he actually shot his worst 3-point percentage since 2011.
Okay, that is interesting.
At 35.3%, he was 41 and 37 the 2 years with Golden State, and then he was 38, 40, 39, 41, 38, all the way up till 2011 where he only shot 35. So actually you could see Kevin Durant be better next year, and I don't know that he'll be on the Warriors, right? So that number could change a little bit. There's not a lot to say because we don't have any clue where he's going to play.
Yeah, and I think that's key, right? We're not surprised with what Kevin Durant did this season. And we're also, in my opinion, we, like you said, we can't figure out what to think about him until next year. But he is, to me, one of those guys. You could say he goes to his own team and he's got to carry a bigger load. He becomes one of those players I start to look at as a potential number 1 fantasy basketball player because he has done it multiple times in the past.
So, I think the top 5 is the top 6, which is unfortunate because 5 is a nice number that we like to say.
Yeah.
I don't see any way that Kevin Durant is not in that top 6. In what should be pretty much everyone's top 6, I think Kevin Durant is firmly planted in that. And, he's kind of in that, like you said, he could be number one player. I'm probably definitely not going to have him number one. I think even if he goes on his own team and there's a decent amount of help around him, but he's definitely the alpha. I still think I'm going to have James Harden over him, though.
Yeah, I think I am too, but it's going to be one of those, hey, if things break the right way, Kevin Durant actually can vie for the best fantasy basketball player next year. So, unlike someone like Giannis, who has those holes in his game where you go, all right, he's going to be one of the most outstanding players. He's going to be a great fantasy player. You'll be happy to get him in the first round. But does he have that ability to hit number one? Probably not. And I'd actually say probably not with our next pick here at number 6 overall, 8-cat on total values, Nikola Jokic. Breakout season for him, like I said. Incredible playoff run. Shout out to the guy. I mean, like, big slow, man. Like, just watching him play is like watching an optical illusion. Like, you're like, why is he able to do these things? He's moving at a negative pace or whatever. But, a unique center hits threes and gets over 7 assists a game. And I don't see that Denver team going anywhere. It's one of the youngest teams in the league. If anything, they might get a piece of personnel that makes them better.
Yeah, and Jokic's guy got significantly better every year. Just turned 24 in February. A guy you could potentially see take a little bit leap up, especially if he gets more minutes. I mean, he played 31.3 minutes a game. A lot of that maybe have to do with his, conditioning is not the best, unfortunately. Will we look back at his 2017-2018 season as a mirage of his three-point shooting? He shot 39.6% that year. He shot 30.7% this year. And the other 2 years in his career are 32 and 33%.
Maybe. But it might be one of those mirages that show up again, right? Like, just 1 year he plays, he hits it well, he plays well. I don't know. It's going to be weird because, like, if he can get conditioned, that will change a lot about probably his game.
Yeah, but he's a guy, right? I mentioned that top 6. I don't even think he's in mine. Like, I just don't.
Yeah, he probably isn't in mine either, and that's crazy because it's incredible.
And so he's in that kind of Paul George, like, filling out the rest of the first round range for me, where it's like I've got the 6, and then it's like I've got Jokic and George and a few other guys we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I'm now even leaning more towards having a 1B and 1C because I don't think there's a lot of really, really great players out there now. And a lot of these guys, while they probably can't be the number 1 overall player, some of them are clearly number 1Bs, and some of them are like, I could be 1B, but I'm probably 1C. And Jokic is probably a 1C for me. Along with the next guy here at number 7, Dame Lillard. You were high on Dame Lillard last year. You said out of that second tier, this would have been your number 1. I think you said this would be your number 1 pick out of that second tier. Last year, Dame Lillard playing himself into the first tier always gets better every single year. He will be 29 next year, so in his prime.
Yeah, and do you remember what I said about? And you actually, I think, made fun of me for this, and I'd like your apology right now. I said if I was picking on the turn this year, do you remember the 2 players I said I would pick?
I want to say Lillard and maybe Embiid.
No. I'm not a big Joel Embiid guy in fantasy because he can never stay healthy.
Not. It must have been Jokic and Lillard.
No, it wasn't Jokic.
Okay, who was it?
Go back and listen in the preseason. I said I would pick Lillard in the first round and Paul George in the second round.
That's true.
And I'm pretty sure you pretty much won your league if you did that.
Yeah, you probably did. Those were 2 great picks. Like I said, Tyler, you were really, really on last year, and everybody should go listen to that bold prediction podcast because you could go see how on Tyler was. I got to set my game up for next season, and Dame Lillard probably gonna have his game up next season too. So like I expect him to be a first round pick. Like he has made himself a first round pick. and
Yeah,
I fully believe it.
and we talk about like those three guys, right? George, Jokic, Lillard. Like a lot of it's personal preference and just who you kind of want to pin your hopes on, and a lot of it might just be like, hey man, I'm gonna watch more Blazers this year than I am Nuggets, so I'm gonna pick Lillard, and other things factor into it, like
Jokic is the
getting a
youngest.
center.
The youngest.
Well, and get a center too. Like especially if you play in like the standard Yahoo where it makes you have two centers, getting a center can be hard.
Yeah.
So maybe you want to go for Jokic, like depending on what your rule set is. But I feel like all three of those players they're outside my top 6, but I'm pretty happy to have any of them in the first round.
Yeah, they're probably a 1C, and I wouldn't put them in that second tier just because I don't think they are turn players or second round players, so they're just not in my second tier. I think there's just kind of a new breed, this new breed of guys, and I don't know where I would be putting the guy who finished 8 on our list here. He played 82 games, which helped him finish 8, but still an incredibly stellar season. Very, very much improved, especially due to the injury to John Wall. I'll talk about Bradley Beal. I am surprised Bradley Beal made this type of leap, and we do have to give some credit to the injury to John Wall because Bradley Beal became a primary ball handler and allowing him to get 5.5 assists per game. A very great season from Bradley Beal, but might be one of my guys that I say, all right, that might have been a career year for Bradley Beal. Like, he might do almost as well next year, and which would probably put him around the turn. He solidly one of the best second tier guys. But Bradley Beal, like, I would have to say this is probably his ceiling. 6 heading into his prime, like this, playing 37 minutes a game.
Yeah, and that's the scary part is the 37 minutes a game. That's always scary.
Yeah.
But he played 36 the year before that too. So I mean, it has happened for 2 straight years. He's played 82 games for 2 straight years. Also a little scary because we talk about that doesn't happen very often. I'll say this, right? John Wall is out for all of next season. He tore his Achilles, not going to play. If Beal is still in Washington and he's the guy, I think he could actually average a few more assists next year because he'll be the whole season without John Wall as opposed to just the last 2/3 of it. I don't think he's going to finish 8th, though. You know what I mean? Like, even if he gets a few more assists and he keeps scoring well and all that stuff, like, I think he'll miss a few games finally.
But and his value will be very similar.
Oh, yeah. And, if you wanted to pick him in the first round, cool. I think there's definitely enough guys here that I'm going to pick him in the second round.
I don't know if he falls completely out of if you're in a 12-team league, I don't know if he falls completely out of my first round.
Okay. That's fair. Would you rather have him or Westbrook?
Bradley Beal.
Okay, then he's in your first round, I think. Unless you're going to take someone like Kyrie Irving or...
Nah, probably not.
Or you're going to shoot for a Joel Embiid type, or you're going to say you have a young guy that you think is really going to take a step forward.
Yeah, there's a couple people that knock him.
Okay. I got one guy that I might be able to swing on. Kawhi Leonard or Bradley Beal.
Ooh. That you had to give me a games guarantee to see Kawhi Leonard per game. Very, very good. If he's playing 65 games next year, I probably want Bradley Beal, but you can't predict any of that. That's probably a pretty good. That's probably a pretty good. It's probably a pretty good gauge. Is say Bradley Beal, Kawhi Leonard. They're probably right around the end of my first round. They're the best second tier players.
So we talk about a lot the turn being like, even in a 12-team league, like 10 to like 15, right? I think Bradley Beal's in that for me. I think he's in that turn.
Yeah, that's fair.
Which is very amorphous.
Second tier.
Right. I think that's very amorphous stage of the draft, right? Because like a lot of different players can be kind of thrown in that little turn range. I think Bradley Beal's in that, and probably a guy I'm definitely very interested in that turn range.
Yeah, and Kawhi was better per game. So you do have to
Yeah,
kind
but
of.
see,
But if
well,
he's going to take it easy in LA or whatever,
that's what I mean. He's going to be on a new contract, and
new team.
I mean the Raptors worked with him to make that whatever they called it management program. I think the new team's going to have to do the same thing.
Yeah, probably.
So betting on Kawhi to play 70 games next year, I'm betting under on that every day of the week and twice on Sunday.
Yeah, but like I want to say, shout out to all these guys who, like people like Bradley Beal, Dave Lillard, all these guys who made these big leaps in their game. But the reason they start bumping back down is for reasons like this. Number 9, Steph Curry only played 69 games, if I'm reading that correctly. Yes. Nice. He played 69 games this season. Steph Curry, a god amongst men, one of the best fantasy basketball players of all time. Really, one of the players, like we said a little bit earlier, that if KD leaves, Steph Curry becomes interesting enough to potentially be a top fantasy basketball player or be the number 1 fantasy basketball player next season.
Yeah, in my top 6, regardless. Not going to convince me otherwise.
Yeah, he's amazing. There's no reason to doubt him. He's Steph Curry. But the next guy here becomes interesting. Number 10, Nikola Vujovic, a absolute over exceeded Tyler's over expectations.
Yeah, a personal favorite player of mine.
And I get why. He only played 28 and a half minutes a game, yet was a 20 and 12 player hitting a 3 a game. So basically, Nikola Jokic without the assists. And that's with great percentages, and that's a really, really quality player. What happens to him next year it puts a big question mark. I don't know if I could get him in my first round in my top 12. I don't think I can.
Well, and I mean he's a free agent, so we have no the hell idea where he's going to play. Why does he re-sign with Orlando? I mean Orlando did make the playoffs, but they have a tendency. They've had a long history of not being the best to Vucevic. So I mean, he's another one, like, right? He could be on any team. We don't really know. Is he even in your turn? Maybe he's okay. Let's assume he's back on Orlando.
If he's back on Orlando, he's not in my turn. And I need to make a little correction. He played 31 and a half minutes a game, so not 28 and a half. And I think that's the key number. And it always is in fantasy basketball. Are those minutes? If he goes to a team like just some random team that needs a superstar and he's going to basically play like 35 minutes a game, Nikola Vujovic probably ends up in my first round. Because if he's going to play like 4 more minutes a game, like he's going to be better than he was this year.
What if he's on the Mavericks?
That's a different question. He's on the Mavericks. I still think he's got the potential to do what he did this year. But I'm not sure I'm putting him in my first round.
And, we won't talk about this guy in the top 60, but, that Porzingis thing is a total wild card as far as
who knows?
Yeah, and who knows, like them adding a third piece, right? And they might add the next player we're about to talk about too, right? That's the guy they're supposed to be very interested in. Like, that'll be very interesting to see how that, if they can actually form some sort of big 3, how that cannibalizes, each man's value a little bit.
Yeah, and that could be the downfall of a lot of these players who were carrying in their teams, like Nikola Vujovic, and also like Kemba Walker, who ended up at number 11. I'm not surprised about Kemba Walker ending up at number 11, though that is, one of his better seasons. Kemba Walker has always been a very good and a bit underrated fantasy basketball player, and this is definitely one of his best seasons. Played all 82 games, I believe. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Impressive. And at 29, he's in his prime. This is who he is. And if he goes to another team, I actually think this is who he is. Like, sure, he might have to give the ball up a little bit more, but that just means more assists and maybe less points. And so I like Kemba Walker here as a solid second tier player. Once again, I don't know if he ends up in my first round.
Yeah, I'm throwing him in my turn though.
Yeah, this is his ceiling.
So I mean, I feel like he's kind of in my turn, and he might slip, just past that 15 mark, depending on type of draft, type of league, all that stuff.
But yeah, if I want to guard, I want to go guards at the beginning. If I don't, then he moves a little bit further down.
Right.
And same with this next guy here. So we're gonna have to keep an eye on Vujovic and Walker, but Russell Westbrook, we know where he is going. He is going to stay in Oklahoma City and pound the ball into the ground and probably average another triple-double, making him obviously one of the...
Dude, it wasn't that close this year. Like, he...
23, 11, and almost 11.
He kicked the triple-double's ass. Like, no offense, but you know what I mean? Like, he wasn't that close. It was like, oh, this could never happen, and now he just does it every year, and it's not that close. Like, he's well over the marks.
It's, quite frankly, it's insane. It's probably now underrated how good it is. Like, because he's just done it multiple times. No one else is doing it, but he's done it. What is this, 3rd year in a row? Yeah,
3 straight years.
He's done it 3 straight years. The big hit here, and for a lot of head-to-head players who punt, they don't give a shit about this, but huge hit in free throw, and his field goal will never be good.
Gonna be 31 in November. Any worries that the crazy minutes and triple doubling catches up to him yet?
He's bound to slow down, but I didn't see any signs of it this year, and he is kind of a freak of human nature by being an absurdly athletic and healthy individual. I'm gonna have to see it. I'd rather get caught seeing it. Like, I'd rather get caught having Russell Westbrook in the season where he falls apart than being like, no, it's not gonna be this year, and then he has a 23, 11, and 11 season, and you pick like Drew Holiday instead.
Yeah, I also wouldn't be surprised to see him get like 25 and Paul George also be at like 25 next year. I'd be surprised to see that shift back a little bit in Russ's favor, that scoring breakdown between the two.
Yeah, I think that's definitely potential. He becomes a lot more valuable for the punters out there, and so he is a first-round player in a punting situation, and probably one of those 1B type of guys.
Putting him in the turn, again.
Punting situation, but in a normal ACAT situation, yeah, I got him in my second round.
Fair.
But you know me, I play with turnovers and I play in 9-cat leagues, and he's actually much further down when you calculate those things. But
oh well, I mean, he's got to make his darn free throws if any kind of roto, he's got to start making his free throws a little bit.
Absolutely. Let's get through these final 3 players. Only at 64 games this season, Joel Embiid. Per game, obviously a fantastic player, but ended up in the top 15. And this is I guess this is the guy I think Joel Embiid is going to be, but he is kind of started deteriorating there in the playoffs. I still think there's some large worries about Joel Embiid's health and his ability to stay on the court, even though he's played multiple seasons with 60 some games.
Yeah, so 2 zeros, right, to start off his career.
Yeah, not great.
And 31, 63, 64. Yeah, I'm not betting on any more than 64 ever. He did play 33 minutes a game this year, which allowed him to take, the statistical boost enough to still be the 13th ranked player in only 64 games. This is a guy that if you're going to pick him on the turn, there's so much upside, right? Because
and so that's actually I believe I was telling people to pick Kawhi and Embiid on the turn because of their upside. Now, if they would have went with your Paul George and who was it? Kimba? No,
Dame.
Dame. Your Dame and Paul George, they made out way better than my prediction. But the per game upside, I was not incorrect.
Well, and so maybe the shift that some people should make, right? Like if you don't see two guys you're in like you really like, right? Like I looked at the field and go, I'm prioritizing the two talents of Lillard and Paul George, and it worked out this year. It doesn't always work out.
Yeah,
right? But
I want to make a point here. Paul George, 28, just turned 29, and Dame Lillard, 28, just turned 29. Like you went with some steady dudes who are entering their prime versus young high upside guys who have a risk.
And I guess that was the point I'm going to make is like maybe you want to go 1-1. Like, I still feel like Damian Lillard is one of the safest players in fantasy.
I agree.
You know what I mean? Like if you're picking at 10 and you're like, man, I just want someone who's going to be really good, and he's probably not going to be the number one player, but he's also not going to be the 20th ranked player. He's going to be in the top 10. Go for Damian Lillard. If Lillard's on the board, go for Damian Lillard. I feel like his amount of safety at that like 10 range where the other guys are all those other top guys are gone is, unmatchable. And then if you go for a Joel Embiid, there's going to be a season where Embiid hits, right? And he plays like 75 games, and he's the third-ranked player, the second-ranked player.
He's sitting where Paul George is this year.
Right, but what season is that going to be? That's going to be difficult to predict. And so people are going to keep taking him, though, at like 6, at 7, at 8. Like they're going to push him into that – that one B tier or that one C tier. And that's not going to be me because I don't feel good enough about the health. I'm going to want someone like Damian Lillard. I'm going to want someone like Paul George over Joel Embiid. And I'm going to do it again next year because, the downside of me saying like, oh, there's going to be a season where he has 75 games. There's also going to be a season where he plays like 50 games.
Yeah.
And I don't want that risk. I want that Damian Lillard, that Paul George.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Joel Embiid has that per game value of being in that top tier, whether it's a 1B or 1C, but because of that risk, because of his injury proneness, and because you just don't know what you're going to get, he has to stay in that second tier for me. And not only that, but he becomes a risk even in the second tier where there are guys in the second tier that I'd probably rather have, so I can feel safe with taking someone who, if I'm working with the turn, I don't want to have a complete blow up of just like, well, you got nothing out of one of your guys on the turn, or maybe even both of your guys on the turn. I don't want to end up in that situation. So it'll be still a risk in my opinion. And
I think I said this to you when you said about Kawhi and Joel Embiid on the turn. Yeah. You made this case about like I'm trying to hit the home run, and I'm like
all in or all out. And
but
it's
to
dangerous.
Well, yeah, and to me, like I guess if you have the strategy of like I'm either finishing first or I'm finishing last, like I you know what I mean. If you're not first, you're last. But for me, I think the flaw in that strategy is like, what are the chances both of them actually hit? Not very good. So if I'm gonna take a Joel Embiid, I want a Damian Lillard, I want a Paul George, I want a safe guy with an upside guy. Or I want two safe guys. I don't want Kawhi and Joel Embiid. I don't want two risky guys. Because at that point, then both of them have to hit, right, for me to be in contention. And I don't feel great about both of them hitting on the same year.
Yeah, and you're 100% right with that. You're basically either you're first or you're last. And if that's the strategy you're going for, cool on you. But that's really not how the season works. And, right. I've talked myself basically out of this strategy, and you've talked me out of it as well. Like, going with those two guys, though I didn't actually think Kawhi was too big of a risk this season. He obviously didn't play as much as I thought he would.
And I think that was the risk, right? That's the risk for both of them. Like, both of them are awesome when they play.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that's where you get that nice upside. But when you look at how a season usually plays out, you don't, and we say this all the time, you cannot win your league in the draft, but you can lose it in the draft, and that is one way to lose it. is to take two risky guys who blow their knees out in the first week or whatever. And you usually win by developing your team, making moves, making trades, making all the and all sorts of crazy things happen during the season, including people blowing their knees out. And being safer in the draft is probably something we'll be preaching more here on Watching the Boxes.
Well, and here's how I think I win a lot of my leagues or do well in a lot of my leagues is, I get a guy in the first and second round that perform at a first or second round level, right? And I win the league or get ahead of other people in getting those guys, at 50 that perform at 35 and at 70 that perform at 50 and at 100 that perform at 70. So, to take two big risks early does not make a ton of sense to me.
Yeah, you gotta just keep finding the value wherever it is, and that's how you do well in the drafts. And I think a lot of people found value in our number 14 guy, the most surprising guy on this list. I actually didn't expect to see him on this list. Andre Drummond, number 14. Good for Andre Drummond. Kind of.
So we talked about the assists, right? He had an anomaly assist year, and then they got Blake Griffin, and once they got Blake Griffin in 2017, 2018, they dropped.
Drop back down.
He scored more. Scored the most, career high, 17.3 points a game.
Yeah, he finally found his scoring touch here. His free throws are now hanging around 60%, which is once again, incredible. Last year he shot 60%. This year close to 60%, and he was shooting 35 before that. Absolutely incredible jump in free throws, even though they still are a detriment to your team if you care about free throw percentages. But basically a guy who can get 16 rebounds is pretty unheard of, and there's not a lot of people in the league who do that, which helps him make up for the fact that he doesn't hit threes and he is a low assist guy, but he gets those steals and blocks, which is super.
Which are trending on elite in both categories, right? Which is huge. I don't have any problems, and I've mentioned this in the past, especially in head-to-head leagues. I don't have any problems taking him, in that turn range, right? Which is kind of where he ended up this year. If you're punting free throws, he's much more valuable than that. A lot of times he hangs around into the 20s. If I can get him in the 20s, I love Andre Drummond in the 20s in a head-to-head league.
Yeah, he is way better at rebounds than almost everybody else in the league, but he is better at rebounds, steals, and blocks than Giannis. So that's saying a whole lot.
Yeah, and if I can get the team to be a guard and another wing or guard, and then Andre Drummond, which has happened in years past, I always feel like I'm so far ahead.
Yeah, he's often a guy who falls down in drafts because he has been inconsistent, and I don't know how comfortable I feel with keeping him in that second tier. If I don't care about free throws, he's 100%.
Right. It's not even that. It's that I think the big sites also they split the baby between kind of roto and head-to-head rankings, right? They don't want to make a set for each and differentiate in the drafts. Yeah. So they have to put Drummond at 25 or 30.
Or even lower, yeah.
Right.
And then he's a top 10 player if you don't care about if you're punting free throws.
Right. And so I think you can a lot of times get some great value from Drummond. And yeah, if Drummond's there at 22, 23, 24 in that third round, even better. I love jumping on Drummond and getting a nice value.
Yeah, definitely. He is a system type of player, so his value varies wildly depending on what league you're playing in, roto or head to head.
Yeah, in roto, is he draftable? You mentioned the thing has gotten better.
He is actually draftable. You have to eat your free throws, and you usually will end up finishing pretty close to last in free throws. Depending on the size of your roto league, he is actually draftable because you're looking at a guy who gets over 1.5 steals, over 1.5 blocks, and 16 rebounds. And those categories also mean stuff. So,
and you're the roto guy. So, is he easier to draft in a shallower roto or a deeper roto?
I think he's easier to draft in a shallow roto.
Me too, because in my in my experience, like a 15, 16 team roto league, like if you draft him and you get a 1 out of like 16, I never can quite find my way all the way to the top
Yeah,
if that
it's
happens.
15 points to make up. Now, granted, there's probably someone else in the league whose free throws are pretty shitty as well. So you might actually get like a 2, but like a 14 points to make up versus like 8 points to make up is a huge difference. And in a shallower league, you can, make sure you get the players you want to make your build. And there's gonna be a lot of guys on the waiver that allow you to build your categories that you're already dominant in, like rebounds, like steals and blocks. And so, to me, it's easier to stay in first place in rebounds or blocks in a shallower league than in a bigger league.
Yeah, and so I find that in a deeper roto, I have a hard time ever pulling the trigger on Drummond because I'm like, man, you're gonna sink me so far in the free throws, and I just, like you said, giving up that 15 points or 14 points or 13 points, it's just so hard for me to fight back from.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Like, he still needs to be owned in those leagues because he ends up being like a weird spot start where you're like, I have to play this guy because he's so dominant in these certain categories, yet he kills me in free throws. And either you decide to say screw it and you end up playing him a lot more, or you spot start him and you end up getting 15 rebounds here, 15 rebounds there, and that keeps you into close races. So he's a money player to have down the stretch because he does things that really nobody else can.
I'm with you there.
So yeah, hard guy to describe what you should do next year because just completely depends on your league. But and also it's I don't know. We'll see what that team looks like. And Andre Drummond still has, I think, a little bit of a risk of being a little fluctuating in what his production is going to be. So I'm not super confident in what he did this year as being the normal Andre Drummond, but
I think you could. I mean, we saw 16.2, then we saw 13.6, then 15, now 17.3 points. The points are kind of all over the map. I do feel like him leading the league in rebounds seems pretty safe. I mean, it's happened 3 out of the last 4 years. And the only year it didn't, he for some reason only played 29.7 minutes a game, which doesn't make any sense. Why that happened, right? He played 33 basically every other year. Yeah. So
Detroit, a underrated, terribly run franchise. So.
But I mean, I feel like with Dwayne Casey there, I feel like Dwayne Casey can coach.
That's technically true.
Stan Van Gundy, not sure what he was doing some of the time. No offense to him, he may be a really great guy.
Yeah, that era of coaching probably needs to move on. But what I don't know. But yeah, Andre Drummond is really going to depend on your league. And number 15, the last guy on this list. Right, but by the way, not in the top 15, Anthony Davis, who will be number 16, and we will lead the next podcast with him. One of the few guys that I would put in my 1A rankings for next year. But number 15, Kyrie Irving for the Boston Celtics, who will probably no longer be on the Boston Celtics next year. No matter where he goes, I'm not terribly worried about his production. This is a good Kyrie Irving year. Seems like he did a lot of Kyrie Irving stuff. He stayed relatively healthy for Kyrie Irving. I'm not terribly surprised by him. We had him in the second tier going into this year. He ended up finishing in the second tier this year, and there's a good chance he finishes in the middle or bottom of the second tier next year, just like he normally does.
Okay, so one thing surprised me, but I got to get to this first because this just threw me off. Okay, Basketball Reference nicknames. We've discussed this in the past, how some of them are crazy. Yep. So he's got 2, one of which I think you can guess. I want you to see if you've ever even heard of the second one. So what's the one you can probably guess?
I don't even know. Clutch? I don't even know what it is.
No, Uncle Drew, right? He's in the movies.
Oh yeah, Uncle Drew. Yeah. I don't care about Kyrie Irving one bit.
His second nickname, and I think this is just amazing, Ankle Taker.
Ankle Taker. That's pretty good. That sounds like one of those there was a great Twitter thread a long time ago about the Chinese nicknames that the players get from China, and those are amazing. And that sounds like one of those Chinese nicknames.
It's like an Undertaker ripoff, right? I mean, I used to watch the WWE back in the heyday of it, right? So I feel like I am going to start officially referring to him as Ankle Taker now. It has happened. The nickname has stuck with me at least. Yeah, the one thing that surprised me about Kyrie, 6.9 assists a game. We had never really seen that from Kyrie.
Yeah, I'm not terribly surprised by that because I think he is a guy who, if you run the system through him, he can get you those assists. He had to play with LeBron, who loves to pound the ball into the ground and rarely makes mediocre players better. Kyrie, not a mediocre player, is actually an incredibly good player. I'm not terribly surprised he could bump up his assists by 1.5 ish. I'm not terribly surprised by that.
Another guy too with rather lengthy injury history, right? Like this was his 8th season, and he's only played over 70 games 4 times.
That is worrisome.
I lied 3 times. My bad. 71, 75, 72. So 3 out of 8. Not great. Yeah. So Kyrie, I'm fine taking him in that turn range, right? But at the same time, like he's one of the more risky options in that turn range, I think, because the 50 game season could be coming as opposed to the 65.
Yeah, and I feel like the risk factor and the I don't know how much better he could possibly get type of factor. Even though he is 27, he'll be 28. He probably get a little bit better here and there.
Well,
I don't know how much further he can improve, depending on where he ends up in his usage in that place. All those factors kind of keep him solidly in the second round for me.
Yeah, I'm with you there. So the crazy thing, and did you see this story on him about now a lot of people think he wants to go to LA to play with LeBron?
I have heard.
After he cried that all he wanted to do was get away from LeBron, and now he wants LeBron back. The most ironic story of the season in NBA basketball.
Yeah, I think that's kind of nonsense. I don't think that's true. I think Kyrie knows what it's like to play with LeBron and how it's not great. All this passive aggressive nonsense wears you down and completely destroyed that Laker team.
Underrated take that's not that underrated. I don't think playing with Kyrie is that great either.
No, that's not underrated at all. That seems pretty obvious. I wonder where he learned all those passive aggressive moves. Definitely from LeBron. And there's a bunch of guys that didn't finish in the top 15 in totals in ACAT. We are going to get to those guys next time. Some really notable names like Anthony Davis, Kawhi Leonard, and then.
Dude, but the ones I'm always more excited to talk about are the ones that people didn't see coming.
Yeah.
And in the next set of 15, there is a lot of those names.
There's a lot of guys who made their way out of the plateau and into this pseudo second, third tier. And shout out to, there's going to be a lot of shout outs because there's a lot of, and there's actually there's even a rookie in that mix. So we are going to be able to talk about that next time. I hope you guys are enjoying your off season. I hope we are going to continue to bring you content based on what's going on. It's the lull in the season, but this is the best time to look back at last season, prepare for next season, and we will be doing just that until we get into the craziness that is free agency. Tyler, where can people find you on Twitter?
You can find me at Tyler P. Watts.
Beautiful, and you can find me at Watch the Boxes. If you really want to support the show, check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/Watching the Boxes. We appreciate you guys. We appreciate our Patreons, and hope you keep listening. Have a great summer. We'll see you next time.